Good evening, everyone. My name's David Kafka. Welcome to September's edition of All Access Belize. And we're coming to you, Serena and I are coming to you from Cancun, Mexico, where we are taking a few days off. And we have my good friend Damion Lupo coming to you from, where are you at, Damion?
Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama.
Alabama, Birmingham, sweet home Alabama. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of talk, and then you can put your questions in the question and answer box, and Serena will help us moderate that. And anyways, if you have any questions, doesn't have to be about the topic we're going to talk about, but it could be, and it could be anything Belize related or investment related. Damion is, well, I'll let him talk about his story and everything that he does in a minute. So we are going to talk mainly today about how you can fund a property, not only in Belize, but really this applies anywhere, with a retirement account. And so today we again are bringing you Damion Lupo with the eQRP company. And Damion, why don't you, for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. You told us where you're at, kind of what you do, not only with the QRP, but you do quite other things as well with gold, silver, crypto, things like that.
Well, I mean, I think the most important thing is that I get to wake up every day and help people break their financial shackles. The mission that I've been on for quite a few years is finding ways to give people truth about their money and how to break the financial bondage that basically society has put on people, from Wall Street to 401ks to how we think about money. And over the years, that's evolved. It's been different in different forms. Like you mentioned, there's a gold business that I've had. Actually, my father started it 50 years ago this year, so that's been around for longer than I've been alive. And ultimately, all these different pieces of my past like that led me to a path of curiosity where I said, okay, something doesn't seem right. Like I feel like I'm missing information. And as an entrepreneur, I've started and run more than 70 companies over the last 25 years, and I'm always trying to figure out how to solve problems. And there's a never-ending supply of problems. People often say, "What should I invest in?" And my suggestion is invest in things that solve problems for somebody, because ultimately, when you solve a problem, you create value. And in the last 10 years or so, I've spent my time and my efforts developing what is known as the eQRP, and that's a way to take control of your retirement accounts, whether it's IRAs or 401ks, and take that money and really exit Wall Street, get yourself out of that place where you're manipulated and fed on by the system, and invest in things that you can actually get your arms around. Literally a tree on raw land, it could be a house, it could be Bitcoin, it could be physical gold, all the stuff that people really have interest in, but they've always been told by financial advisors that they can't do. And that's what I've had the pleasure of waking up every day for a decade, helping people do that and working with my team, helping people get control of their money. And ultimately, what that means, David, is people get control of their financial future. They're no longer looking forward to a time where they wake up and they're afraid. They're looking forward to a time where they wake up and they feel free. And then that's why I do what I do. And it happens to be in the form of the eQRP, which is really just it's the gold standard in self-directed retirement accounts. And that's the tool, that's the process. And the team and I get to do that with people every day.
And that's awesome. So for those of you that don't know, when you collect a, a check, a portion of that goes to a self-directed IRA, not a self-directed, a 401k. And that is just put in Wall Street, on your behalf. And majority of the people that are managing that have no financial wherewithal. For instance, when I was in the fire department at Mount Pleasant, those people controlling that were, maybe a couple firemen, a couple policemen, a couple trash company, the trash collectors, and they were managing our money. And so there's really, how can they do it when there's no training involved? And so when you leave a company, this money can be converted into, what Damien's company does. And Damien, you do all that, right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately what we're doing is all that money that people have in their 401ks or like 457s or 403bs, like in the fire departments, it's a different type of retirement account. But all of these are just they're pools, piles of money that at some point, if you're fortunate enough to have that, you leave a job and you say, well, now what? Now what do I do? And Wall Street has an answer. It's, hey, just give us your money and we'll manage it, if you will. We'll quote unquote manage it. And the problem is most financial advisors, and I say most, I would say 90% plus, are trained to be good salespeople, and they're good at keeping your money trapped. I had a recent experience trying to get some money out of a bank in my own personal account, and I had the president of the bank reaching out to me when I was at a branch trying to get a wire out. He was called by the person that I was working with to get a wire, and then he called me on my cell phone right after that and was trying to keep my money stuck there. And this is the same experience people have in banks, in Wall Street, because those systems believe that your money is theirs. And technically, if the bank fails, it might actually be theirs. There's a lot of weird things going on in the banking system these days that have been put in place that really your money is not safe unless you have control of it, and that has to do with counterparty risks. But I mean, ultimately, what we're doing is we're giving you the ability to invest that money in things that are real. Instead of saying, well, I hope my financial advisor, who quite frankly is not really advising you, they're selling you. They're advising you not to leave your money, to not leave your money. Like don't leave with your money. Like that's what they're really saying. And they're not telling you, let's really look out there. They're saying, let's look at my portfolio of stocks and mutual funds, and let's do this target date fund, and let's do this bond stock portfolio, and it's nonsense. The reason it's really good is because it's good for them, because the fees that they chew on, whether they make you money or not, and then they'll claim that over the last 40 years it's had the stock market's had this type of run. And the reality is it's not true, because when you start peeling out all the fees that Wall Street charges, both the ones that are upfront and the ones that are hidden, the real return is single digits at best. And when you talk about inflation, you might be flat, meaning you might just maintain that cash. The problem is with inflation being more like 8, 10, 12, 15%, everybody's losing money and they don't even realize it. They're losing purchasing power. So what we're doing is we're giving people a fighting chance to actually be able to retire in a place where they have the ability to live and not just do what my dad did, which is worked his whole life military and being a professor. And then he retired and was afraid until he died that he was going to run out of money. And I think that's unfortunately how most people are, because they have no idea that they can do things that would preserve and grow their capital. They're just conned into having their money sitting inside of a Wall Street vehicle.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, last I heard, there was about $15 trillion. Is that number still about the same that's locked up in retirement accounts?
It's actually grown quite a bit. It's somewhere between 30 and 40 trillion now. And so
Wow.
there's this massive pile, and it seems like a large number. The reality is there's just a lot. I mean, our system is built based on Wall Street's influence and the laws that were written by Congress that were really written by Wall Street, saying, here, this is how we can get money into our coffers and how we can fee it to death. And so the reason that it keeps growing is because laws keep changing to push people into that system. And quite frankly, people are pretty busy, and it's complicated. And so they tend to say, okay, well, you know what? I'm getting free money from my company or from the fire department or from the government with a match. And so they say, sure, it's free money. I'm getting 100% on my money. And so they just throw it into the stock market, and they figure that's good. It's actually not. It would be a lot better if they were a little bit more active. But it's hard. People are busy, and they're chasing a lot of things right now. So I think that this is the default that people end up doing. And there's a better way to take control and actually drive your retirement versus just being in the trunk and hoping you don't go off a cliff.
Yeah, right. Now, I have helped a lot of people, unlock some cash through your company, and they invest it in real estate in Belize. But really, this will work anywhere. Tell us a little bit about what you are allowed to invest in and what you're not allowed to invest in.
So with retirement accounts, what the advisors, if we even want to call them advisors, if the financial professionals, whatever these folks, they'll tell you that, hey, you can invest in anything you want as long as it's a stock or a mutual fund in my list. And the reality is that the IRS and the Department of Labor tell you that you can invest in anything you want other than A, B, and C. And really, it's certain types of things, like you can't invest in collectibles, like a collectible car or a collectible coin. You can't invest in something that you're going to use today. So some people say, well, I want to invest in a vacation house. That's fine. Just invest in it, rent it out, and then, or land. You can invest in land in Belize or anywhere else. And then down the road, if you wanted to use it, you just distribute it to yourself like you would distribute cash when you retire. So you can really invest in almost anything. The IRS just tells you, hey, you can't invest in a few things. You can't invest with a few people. Like you can't take your retirement account and invest it with your kids or your parents, but you could with your brothers and sisters. So there's some certain people that you can't invest with, and then there's a few things that you can't invest with or invest in, but it's really pretty wide open. It's not stocks and bonds and mutual funds. That's what Wall Street wants you to think. It's really almost anything you can imagine. A lot of people are investing in land in foreign countries. They like the idea that the land can't be seized by the US government. A little hard to go scoop up an island. And they like the idea of investing in things like actual Bitcoin that you can take custody of, which you can do with an eQRP, and things like physical gold, which you can hold with an eQRP. Interestingly enough, it's illegal to hold physical gold and silver or Bitcoin or any of these things if you have an IRA. You cannot physically do that with an IRA. The courts ruled a couple of years ago that this is against the law, and they will distribute and fine you, penalize you if you do it. People got caught. They were abusing the IRAs. So we recommend that people, if you can, avoid using an IRA, because quite frankly, you don't have control, because there's still a custodian. With an eQRP, you actually get to be the one in charge because you're the trustee, which is the equivalent. You get to control, hold, own, run, decide. You are absolutely the one in charge.
Right, very good. So tell us a little bit about the differences between a traditional 401k, self-directed IRA, and a eQRP.
Well, the traditional 401k, when you're working somewhere, you get options. You can invest in a very aggressive mutual fund with a bunch of stocks in maybe smaller companies. You can invest in international funds. You can invest in maybe some bonds if you're older and you want to have a less risky portfolio. Interestingly enough, I would say that bonds are one of the most dangerous things right now, considering that interest rates are moving up. And when that happens, bond prices move down. They're inversely correlated. So you've got a huge problem with the safe Wall Street bet, and that was air quotes if you're listening to this. The idea of bonds being safe is a misnomer. They're actually one of the most dangerous things. It's kind of a ticking time bomb. So that's what 401ks are offering. If you look at just about any 401k in the United States, that's what they offer. And that's because Wall Street built them. And so the difference between that and a self-directed IRA, for example, is a self-directed IRA, you can start doing things outside of Wall Street. You can start doing maybe some real estate. You can invest in gold, silver, Bitcoin, that kind of stuff. The problem is you can't actually hold it, you can't control it, and you get taxed if there's any type of debt, like an apartment that maybe has a loan, which they pretty much always do. An IRA, you get hammered with a tax called UBIT tax. So you can't hold it. You get taxed extra, not, in addition to other taxes. And so this is kind of a problem. On the other side of this, you've got the eQRP, which you can hold the stuff yourself. So you actually have control if you want it. And UBIT doesn't apply. It's exempt if you have real estate that has debt. So the reality is that you've got different vehicles that can they're all a shelter, David. They're a shelter from taxes to a certain extent. The only one that actually avoids the UBIT tax and gives you the ability to control and buy everything is the eQRP. Traditional 401ks don't do it, and self-directed IRAs don't do it. It's a completely different animal. There's a lot of misinformation. Unfortunately, a lot of IRA companies would like to suggest that everything is the same because they want to have everything being a commodity. And the reality is it's a different world. eQRPs give you control, and they put you inside of a community with people that are doing the same thing. So you're not alone. You're not just sitting there with a binder full of paper hoping it all works out. You're actually interacting with people. It's a closed community. So unless you're an eQRP member, you don't get to be a part of it. And then once you are, you're surrounded by people that are doing this, people that are empowered, people that are responsible, people that actually have skin in the game. It's a completely different world.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think another big difference is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the amount of money you can put in a traditional self-directed IRA versus a eQRP.
Right. If you have self-employment income, you have limited amounts that you can put into like an IRA, for example. You can put $6,000, $7,000 a year. That's not going to get you anywhere over 20 years. I mean, truly, it's not going to do anything. For most people, that's going to get you just broke. And with an eQRP, it's 10 times that. It's $60,000, $70,000 a year, depending on your age. And so we're talking 10 times more. And if there's a couple people, you're talking over 100, 120, $130,000. We've had families that are putting with 2 or 3 kids that are putting away $250,000 a year. And with an IRA, if that was your strategy, which a lot of people use IRAs, then you might be able to put 20, 30,000 for an entire family versus $250,000. So I mean, if you want to 10x your life, if you want to 10x your freedom, you 10x your investments, this is absolutely the right way. If you want to keep things really small and you want to retire on oatmeal, then probably an IRA is a good idea.
Right. Very good. Yeah. So it's just very, I mean, I'm really impressed with it. And I'm also impressed with the speed. I've had traditional 401k self-directed IRAs. It takes 2, 3, 4 weeks to get a deposit check. And with the eQRP, people are sending the money, pretty fast.
The huge difference between the eQRP and the IRAs and even self-directed 401ks at Schwab or different places, the problem is you have weeks of delays, and what they're trying to do, quite frankly, is keep your money there because they're making money off the interest, off the spread. They want to keep your money controlled. If you start buying alternative assets, it's no longer something that they hold. They can't make money off of it. So there's delays. With an eQRP, you can fund things in a matter of hours. And I'm being literal. You say I want to invest in this thing, and you can issue a wire, and the funds are there within hours that same day. This happens all the time when people are buying land, they're buying gold, they're buying Bitcoin, because you're in control of your checking account. So it's truly a completely different experience, and that's why people like it, because they feel like they're in control. They don't have to go beg for their own money, which I mentioned earlier in our chat. Going to a bank and saying, "Hey, I want to wire some money," and then they grill you, and then they try to push back, and then they try to bribe you with a little bit more interest. It's like ridiculous. This is your money. I mean, my answer when they say, "Why do you want your money?" You know what? Because it's my effing money, and that's really how I feel.
That's right. That is crazy. What about most traditional self-directed IRAs, or not traditional self-directed IRAs, but traditional IRAs? They get paid, like you said, a percentage under assets under management.
Right.
How do you make your money and provide for the staff and everything that you do? Because one thing that my clients tell me is that you all provide excellent customer service.
And that what it really comes down to, this is about relationships, and it's an easy thing for people to say, and a lot of companies talk about how they care, and then they don't show you that what they show you is the opposite. They put you on hold with a robot, or you can't understand somebody because they're in a country that's 20 million miles away that speaks Martian, and you're just like sitting there going, I don't know what's going on. Um, so we have a flat fee when we set things up, and on an annual basis. So it's a fair, appropriate annual flat fee. If you have 100,000 or 100 million, it's still the same thing. So we're not doing a different service if you have more money. And that's one of the crazy things. Like Wall Street will say, "Oh yeah, we're going to charge you more." It's like, yeah, but you still did one trade, and
Right.
yet you're going to charge me 2% of the entire trade. Like, why am I paying you $27,000 a year in fees for doing that one trade or two trades? So I don't believe in that. I think you're not doing more work. But that's how, I mean, if you think about it, how do insurance agents and financial advisors spend so much time on vacation and golfing and out at the beach? It's because they have passive income from people's funds that are sitting there, and that's the game. I used to be in that game early in my career. I had an insurance agency, and the whole idea was getting policies and assets under management, and then you could basically be on vacation most of the time. So that's the system here. It's very, very simple and very clean. You pay an appropriate fee every year. It's fixed, and then you keep all your money, and that's how I think it should be.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, what about a lot of your clients, they invest in what I call group investments for the layman, that syndications,
Mhm.
as a limited partner. Does the eQRP allow people to invest in that through their retirement system that you provide?
That's actually one of the investing in syndications is one of the most popular things people do because they're able to take part in larger deals. And if you've ever played the cash flow game that Robert Kiyosaki put together about 25 years ago, there's small deals and there's big deals. Like in the very beginning, I started buying individual houses. And ultimately I went from that, I graduated to bigger deals, created bigger deals. Now we're doing $100 million deals. And you don't do $100 million deal by yourself, not normally. Like that's the average person is not going to write, cut a check for $100 million, but you put a bunch of people together and you can do it. You can do $100 million deal. So that's what people use their retirement money for oftentimes because you're really meant to be passive. You're not meant to be an active manager of a deal. In fact, that's prohibited. So what's great is that when you invest in a syndication in these group properties or opportunities, then it's a perfect fit. It's exactly what the IRS is wanting you to do. Things that you're not managing, where you're a passive investor. Just like if you bought Amazon stock, you're not doing anything for Amazon. Maybe you're buying a lot of stuff there, but you don't personally manage Amazon. Like you're not Jeff Bezos. And so this is that's an incredibly useful tool for people to be able to participate with for the syndication deals.
Right. Very good. Thank you. And then another question we get a lot from our investors or our clients is that they're going to get penalized for taking their money out of their 401k into an eQRP. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. That the again, misinformation. And I mean, what I always tell people is if you want to learn, do not go Google because you will Google yourself into confusion. And there's a lot of misinformation. And unfortunately, people can post things and a black and white thing on one page looks like a black and white thing on another page, and then you're trying to figure out what's real. So the truth is you can move money from a 401k or an IRA or a 403b, any of these retirement accounts. Just about anything can be moved into an eQRP. There are no taxes and there are no penalties when you do it. It's called a rollover. So it's very straightforward. It's very direct, and generally there's no costs. So occasionally we'll see some firm that will charge an exit fee of $100 or $200, but typically there's no cost, and it may be a wire fee, and then you end up with your money. So you know you're not going to be taxed or penalized. Some institutions we've seen this with some of the custodians. They'll actually try to force you to think that you're going to have a taxable event, and that's just fear mongering. It's unfortunate, and it's a way to try to keep people trapped. But the truth is that you do not get taxed when you do a rollover.
Yeah. And it's like you said, they tell me all the time that that's what they're told is that they're going to get tax from the IRS, right? And that's just it's sad. So let's talk a little bit about Social Security. We know a lot of people are banking on Social Security going to be around when they get here or a pension of some sort. Um, what do you know about that? How little money that they have with this baby boom generation going into, retirement.
Well, here's the reality. People say Social Security is going to go broke, and it's impossible to go broke when you can print the money. So let's just be real. Your Social Security is going to be there. There's actually nothing there. They print money, and the government prints, and they'll replenish Social Security's trust fund, if you will. But it doesn't mean that those dollars are going to actually buy anything. With that whole system, with 30 plus trillion in debt and no ceiling at the moment, we're all we're doing is printing ourselves into an oblivion. So my thinking around Social Security is I don't care whether it's there or not. I'm not going to plan for it. In fact, I don't even care if it shows up. It's not going to be a bonus to me. My thinking is it's my job. It's my responsibility to go create my wealth. The sad part about the pension system is many of them are underfunded. We have a friend, Ed Siddell, who wrote a book with Robert Kiyosaki, and they were talking about it, and the book's called "Who Stole My Pension." And the truth is, Wall Street has stolen the pensions. It's basically just feed them and underfunded them. They're it's sad to see people spend 20, 30 years working for companies, whether it's an airline or UPS, or it doesn't make any difference. And they basically wake up one day and they're retiring, and instead of $5,000 or $6,000 a month, we've seen this with UPS drivers. They're saying, okay, now you get 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,500 a month, and they can't work anymore. And that one skill isn't really applicable to something past that. So I don't know that it's really valuable for people to completely rely on pensions or Social Security. I think it's most important to rely on things that you can actively engage with and you can direct and grow. So what this comes down to is it's financial literacy. The eQRP requires you to be engaged. You have to think because it's not going to do something for you. It's going to do something that you direct. And that's the beauty and the problem. Some people say, well, how is what is my eQRP going to make a year? And the question is, what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to make whatever you want it to make? There's no reason that you shouldn't be making 15, 20, 30% on your money. When you're actively engaged, that's very realistic. The problem is people are used to doing things very passively. And if you're not going to make 15, 20, 30% by not engaging, a lot of people unfortunately have seen that recently where they've watched some of their deals that they've put money into. They thought they were going to make 20 or 30%, and they're getting hammered because it was speculation. So when you go into deals with intelligence where you studied and you go in and you know what you're doing, it's very realistic to make 20+% consistently. It's just not if it's all speculation. Eventually, the bubble bursts.
Yeah, usually if it's too good to be true, it usually is what I like to say. Then also, man, I was going to say something and it just slipped out of my mind. So tell us, you do gold and silver. Um, you're a dealer. Tell us a little bit about that. So if I wanted
Yeah,
to buy gold and silver from you, you can do that.
yeah. One of the companies inside of our ecosystem is called My Gold Advisor, and it's a company that was originally.
Oops.
And
Is that
really,
Frank?
it's precious metals, and so it's an easy way for them to be able to purchase those metals by basically having that inside of an ecosystem. It's trusted, and they have a lot of options whether they want to ship it, they want to vault it, they want to have part of it. It's very and it's also liquid. So one of the interesting things about that whole ecosystem is if people have metals that what they generally people don't realize is that if you said, okay, I want to have gold and silver, and then I found a deal I want to go fund, your gold and silver can be converted to cash to fund your deal within hours. And that's people don't realize that it's actually more liquid than stocks. And so big surprise for most people when they try to sell a stock and it takes 3 days to settle. With gold and silver, it takes minutes.
Exactly. And it's not a paper gold and silver, right? It's actual, they're physical gold.
That's right. Your I would call ETFs like GLD and SLV, those are fool's gold. They're not real. And there's no particular audit that would give anybody any sense of security. We don't have any idea how much actual gold and silver is there. It's the best guesses is there's 50 times more paper than there is metal, and nobody can tell. It's kind of like Fort Knox. Is there gold there or not? It has not been audited in 50 years. So
Yep.
it's definitely, if you're going to invest in gold and silver, you want real physical gold and silver. You do not want to be investing in paper. Paper is completely manipulated.
Yeah, because if you go, if let's say everybody wants their gold and silver with an ETF, they have the right not to send it, right?
They do. The rules are really squishy, and it basically is whatever is good for the dealer, whatever is good for the broker, whatever is good for the exchange. It just has nothing to do. I mean, people are just looked at as numbers and consumers, and there's really no protections in favor of the people. It's all about protecting the exchanges and the institutions. So yeah, they can do whatever they want, and you're definitely at risk. That's called counterparty risk. When you physically own gold and silver, you hold it, there's no counterparty risk because no matter what happens, you still are holding it. With an ETF, you've got counterparty risk all over the place.
Exactly. So it's there's many classes that Damion and I have been to, where we learn from people like Robert Kiyosaki, Dana Samuelson, Brian London, and all those about gold and silver and how you should own it, not just an ETF. What about? I was gonna kind of drawing a blank again. So again, if you're just joining us, We have Damion Lupo here, and he is with the eQRP, and him and his team are helping unshackle people and where they control their retirement. It's sad. So many people spend more time planning a trip or planning a vacation or a holiday more so than they do their own retirement. And if you want to make a specific dollar amount, there has to be some planning involved. And especially if you're relying on, your 401k or self-directed IRAs or whatever. So again, tell us a little bit about what your team does in helping people, educating people on what they can expect, what they need to do, and what are some things you feel people should do to learn themselves? Because I know a lot of people, Robert Kiyosaki is always saying, people are asking him, well, what should I invest in? And he's like, well, invest in education. So tell us a little bit about what kind of you believe investing and talking for education for people who are wanting to join the eQRP ecosystem.
Well, there's a few things. One, we take people through the entire process of getting their money. So if they've got an IRA or a 401k, we take them through the process. We make sure the money gets out. We set up bank accounts. We get the money moved over. So what we do different in there is that we're walking people through the entire process. Sometimes we're on the phone with a custodian for 3 or 4 hours with our client. And that's very unusual. No other company in the country is doing something like that because it's too time consuming. So we start there, and then we take people through a process. Once they get their money, then we do a map, the Millionaire Action Plan with people. So it's a multi-hour process. We take people through their entire gap where we take them from where they are to where they're trying to get to, and then we help them map out a plan so that they can actually run with the money and do something. People get a hold of their money and they have no idea what to do. So this investment strategy that we go through really helps them. And it's not a process to say, okay, we're going to sell you these mutual funds like a financial advisor would, because if you do financial planning with a financial advisor, they're going to show you all these stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and life insurance that they can sell you. That's the goal. Our goal is to give you clarity around what you're missing and how to get there and how long it's going to take, and then you go do the work. And then once that's in place, then you've got a community that supports you that you can interact with. Thousands of people that are part of this community that are all in the same boat. They've all taken control of their money. They all have eQRPs, and it's magic where people come together. It creates incredible accountability and synergy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And definitely, we advise you to get some financial education through find a mentor and things like that. We kind of, you breezed over something that I really want to touch on again because it's pretty important is the UBIT tax. In a traditional, self-directed IRA versus the eQRP where you don't have it. How much is that UBIT tax that you can save by being in a eQRP?
Well, so the UBIT tax is 37% as a max, and you get to 37% pretty fast. And so basically what happens is, let's say you invested $100,000 in some type of real estate, like say an apartment, and that $100,000 doubled. And let's say it was an average apartment, which was like 70% debt. So, you buy an apartment and there's 30% equity and 70% debt. In that case, you could be looking at $25,000 in tax that you have to pay just because of UBIT if you used an IRA. And if you had switched, and here's one of the great things, if you had switched from an IRA to an eQRP, your tax would be zero. And one of the great things is people that have IRAs that have invested in apartments, things that have leverage, debt, you can switch the investment from an IRA into an eQRP while it's invested. You just have to do it before the property sells. If you do it after it sells, you're out of luck. You're going to pay the tax. And then fortunately, David, I've seen a lot of people that are syndicating that are putting deals together, and either they don't know or they don't want to tell the people about the UBIT tax because they think that people will go run away. And there's a solution. You just transfer it over. There's no tax. There's no penalty when you transfer from an IRA to an eQRP, and then you don't have the tax. But we're talking up to 37%. And so in that scenario, I mean, you think about that. Why would you do that? Let's say you did that 3 or 4 times over a lifetime where you went from one apartment to a next, and you're paying this 25% basically of your gains, and it could be as high as 37. I mean, that's that's just dumb. It's unfortunate because it's totally unnecessary.
Yes, exactly. And that's why, Damian and I, we put out this material so you can get this information and you can learn and study it yourself. And if you have any questions, you reach out. I'm kind of high level, and I know just enough to get you kind of going. And then I kind of push you off to Damian's team where they can kind of help answer more and more questions. I know I had some clients just recently that we had some complicated issues that we were trying to navigate, and we were just trying to see what we could do and we couldn't do. One thing is so we talked about gold. We talked about you can buy gold and silver with it. You said you could buy property with it. Can you buy property and then build a house with it?
Yeah, there's nothing that restricts you from having a property, or whether it's dirt or houses or developing. We have a lot of people that invest in apartments that are going ground up, mini storage that's going ground up. People invest in manufacturing facilities that are being built. So a lot of the beauty of investing in something that's being built is that there's typically a lot of upside, because you're not just buying something hoping that the property actually goes up just because of inflation or something. You're creating value, literally dirt up. And so there's a great opportunity to really juice your returns by investing in things that are being built.
Yeah, so I appreciate that very much. So again, Damian, any last words you want to say? I thank you for being on. Yeah, any last words?
Well, I would suggest that everybody goes to eqrp.com and poke around, get on a call, do a discovery call with the team, and see if this is a good fit, see if you're a good candidate, and it might just be that you have access to a whole lot of money. We've had people that have been working, and once they realized they could take their retirement account if they retired and start investing it, they realized they didn't have to work. They were really working for free because they had enough money sitting in a 401k. And we said, well, if you take this money and you start making 15 to 20% by actively investing it, you have the ability to make more than you're making at your job. And they didn't realize it, and they were thinking they were going to work another 5 or 10 years. And people have left their jobs earlier and have literally bought years of their life of freedom. And so if that's appealing, if you think I would like to have more years doing exactly what I want to do and being financially free, then it's worth going to eqrp.com and picking up a copy of the book that we have there available to download, and getting on a call and seeing if this is a good fit for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And thank you for that. And again, if you're in Belize and you want a hard copy of that book, I have those available for you. I have the new edition as well as the old edition. The new edition is kind of talking about the gold and silver case that Damian talked about a little bit ago. But again, if you don't are not in Belize or you're looking at buying property anywhere in the world, just go to the eQRP and just reach out and navigate that website and then get on a call with his team. Damon, we appreciate it so much, and hopefully we see you soon, buddy.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, David. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All
Thanks
right, take care.
everyone for joining. See you next time on All Access Belize. Thank you.